Job chapter number 6. So for this section of Job, the middle section, like I've said the last couple of weeks, we're going to take them by conversation. So in this particular case, there's 2 chapters here in the book of Job that Job answers. Job chapter 6, just follow along here as I read, says, "But Job answered and said, Oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed and my calamity laid in the balances together. For now it would be heavier than the sand of the sea, therefore my words are swallowed up. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me, the poison whereof drinketh up my spirit. The terrors of God do set themselves in array against me. Doth the wild ass bray when he hath grass, or loweth the ox over his fodder? Can that which is unsavoury be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the white of an egg? The things that my soul refused to touch are as my sorrowful meat. Oh, that I might have my request, and that God would grant me the thing that I long for, even that it would please God to destroy me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. Then should I yet have comfort. Yea, I would harden myself in sorrow. Let him not spare, for I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should hope? And what is mine end that I should prolong my life? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh of brass? Is not my help in me, and is wisdom driven quite from me? To him that is afflicted, pity should be shown from his friend, but he forsaketh the fear of the Almighty. My brethren have dealt deceitfully as a brook, and as the stream of brooks they pass away, which are blackish by reason of the ice, and wherein the snow is hid. What time they wax warm, they vanish. When it is hot, they are consumed out of their place. The paths of their way are turned aside. They go to nothing and perish. The troops of Timah looked, and the companies of Sheba waited for them. They were confounded because they had hoped. They became thither and were ashamed. For now ye are nothing. You see my casting down and are afraid. Did I say, Bring unto me, or give a reward for me of your substance, or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the mighty? Teach me, I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand wherein I have erred. How forcible are right words! But what doth your arguing reprove? Do you imagine to reprove words and the speeches of one that is desperate, which are as wind? Yea, ye overwhelm the fatherless, and you dig a pit for your friend. Now therefore be content, look upon me, for it is evident unto you, if I lie. Return, I pray you, let it not be an iniquity. Yea, return again, my righteousness is in it. Is there iniquity in my tongue? Cannot my taste discern perverse things? Is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? Are not his days like the days of an hireling? As a servant earnestly desireth the shadow, as an hireling looketh for the reward of his work, so am I made to possess months of vanity, and wearisome nights are appointed to me. When I lie down, I say, When shall I arise, and the night be gone? And I am full of tossings to and fro unto the dawning of the day. My flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. My skin is broken and become loathsome. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and are spent without hope. Oh, remember that my life is wind, mine eye shall no more see good. The eye of him that hath seen me shall see me no more. Thine eyes are upon me, and I am not. As the cloud is consumed and vanisheth away, so he that goeth down to the grave shall come up no more. He shall return no more to his house, neither shall his place know him any more. Therefore I will not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I a seer or a whale that thou settest a watch over me? When I say, My bed shall comfort me, my couch shall ease my complaint, then thou scarest me with dreams and terrifiest me through visions, so that my soul chooseth strangling and death rather than life. I loathe it. I would not live alway. Let me alone, for my days are vanity. What is man that thou shouldest magnify him, that thou shouldest set thine heart upon him, and that thou shouldest visit him every morning and try him every moment? How long wilt thou not depart from me, nor let me alone till I swallow down my spittle? I have sinned, what shall I do unto thee, O thou preserver of men? Why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? And why dost thou not pardon my transgression, and take away mine iniquity? For now shall I sleep in the dust, and thou shalt seek me in the morning, but I shall not be. Job's response to Eliphaz, quite a passion there as you see him kind of just venting up. Any comments, thoughts, observations here out of the book of Job, these 2 chapters, before I give you the few thoughts that I have written here? Connor, have you got the mic? Yep. Anybody with a thought or a comment? Down the front.
Just thinking about people who talking about ghosts. Someone has come back to visit me in my house. Well, this scripture's put that to bed, where it says, "As the cloud is consumed and vanish away, so he that goeth down to the grave shall come up no more. He shall return no more to his house, neither shall his place know him any more." So that puts paid to ghosts.
That's a true statement. I like little nuggets like that. As you read through it, you're like, oh man, that's not. He's not really talking about ghosts, but you absolutely think that's right. People that say, "Oh, my dead relative has come back from the dead to speak with me," that's not true. No, that's there is one case in the Bible where that did happen, and with the witch of Endor, and Samuel was called up from the dead, and he came back. That happened, but every other time the Bible says this about ghosts and about those that do seances or whatever, that they say they talk to their dead relative. The Bible calls them familiar spirits. Isn't that an interesting thought? That they are spirits and they're familiar, but they're not really who they think they're contacting. So when they have that, whatever they're having a seance or, and they're contacting the other side, someone says, "Oh, I've got hold of your great grandmother." That's not the great grandmother. That is a demonic spirit who is acting familiar.
Like an old grandma.
Yeah, and Job says, when you go to the grave, you ain't coming back again.
That's it.
You go before God. You don't come back and go and pack and go and just hover around waiting to get onto the next part of the life, like some people will suggest, that you're like, right, we have to finish some kind of element of this earth to complete their life before they can move on. That's not biblical. That's not biblical.
I think even the witch of Endor was like, she was frightened.
She was freaked out because she was a fraud. That's exactly right. And for the first time in her life, she actually called up the dead. And it absolutely freaked her out for sure. Anybody else? Thoughts or comments there? It's all right. I understand it's a long week and it's a busy week, as Jackie made mention of before, 4 times already. Let me give you my thoughts here. It flows on from what we said last week. I think it was last week, about the assayer. Remember what assaying is? To assay means to test or to prove the value and the quality of something, particularly gold or metal or ore. You're testing the quality and the value of it. The analyte is what is being assayed. That's what is being tested and assessed. It's being assayed. And the assayer is the person who is doing it, that's testing it. And so the person who tests the ores and the metals and analyzes it is the assayer. So in the book of Job, you have Eliphaz and his 2 friends. They are the assayers who are testing and proving and testing Job, who is the analyte. They're testing his composition, his value, his worth. And the way that they are doing it, they are assaying him with words. They are testing him with hard words and challenging him about his life. But Eliphaz's main arguments are this, all right, from chapters 4 and 5. Their main arguments is this. In chapter 4 and verse 7, he says, "Whoever perished being innocent." So he's basically saying to Job, right, these bad things are happening to you because clearly you've been bad. If you were good, good things would happen to you. No one ever perishes being innocent, so therefore you are under the judgment of God, which is what we would normally say, which is a very common thing to say. And God does judge, but in this case we know the backstory that Job was innocent. He was a man who eschewed evil, he was righteous before God, he feared God exceedingly, and God even said, "This man is a righteous man." That's what God said. So what Eliphaz has to say, though is true, in this case is not true, is what we were talking about last week. And so he says, "Whoever perished being innocent." So he says, you have to be guilty is what he's saying. Then he goes on in chapter 4, and I never got to this part because we got distracted by other things. But in chapter 4 and verses 18, he basically says, man is frail. Man is frail. He says to Job, man is frail. And look what he says, behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. Like God charges his angels with folly. They that were fallen angels, he charged his angels with folly. He says, how much less in them that dwell in houses of clay? What's he talking about, houses of clay? He's talking about this body that we live in is a house of clay. Paul makes the same mention that we live in these vessels of clay, that we, from dust to dust, ashes to ashes, this body is of this earth and it goes back to this earth. So he says, these houses of clay are frail. We are frail. And he says, man is frail. And if he charges his angels with folly, surely he's going to charge man with folly as well, because man is frail. And he says, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. And then he says that not only is man frail, but man will fail. In chapter 5 and verse 7, his argument is that, yet man is born unto trouble as the sparks fly upward. He's saying it's without doubt that man is frail and he will fail. As sparks fly upwards, he's born unto trouble. But then his argument goes on to say in the last point is just seek unto God. We know you're guilty, and it's not a shame to be guilty before God, because man is frail and man will fail. So therefore just seek unto God and humble yourself under the Almighty and the hand and his correcting hand, and he'll raise you up. He says in verse 17, happy is the man whom God correcteth. Therefore despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty. And he goes on to the rest of the chapter explaining that the people who are chastened of God are made better under the scourgings and the lashes of God. So just surrender and submit to the lashes that God has brought upon you because of your sin that is obviously in your life, because bad things happen to bad people. No one ever perishes being innocent. That's Eliphaz's argument. And it would seem from us that we would probably make the exact same argument towards someone if we're counseling and maybe reviewing someone's life. But Job didn't take that, because Job starts off his very next comment as, but Job answered and said. It wasn't case closed in Eliphaz's mind, it was case closed. This is exactly what's happened in Job. You just need to surrender and submit to the Almighty. Job says, right, I'm going to give you some things that you haven't weighed up yet and you haven't considered. And he then goes on and gives answer back to Eliphaz, and he says to Eliphaz, this in verse 2, oh, that my grief were thoroughly weighed and my calamity laid in the balances together. I think what he is doing there is connecting back to that word assayed, because there are a few ways to assay, is to test and to prove something. One, you can put it in a furnace, which is what Pastor Thomas does. He works at some company that builds furnaces, and those furnaces are then shipped off to the mine sites, and they put the ore in those furnaces to test the quality. So you can put it under heat to find the quality of something, but you can also weigh something, and you can test whether it really is truth in value by weighing it. And he is saying, put me in the weights, and you can assay me by weighing me and weigh my grief and weigh my calamity, and you'll find that what you're saying doesn't add up, because my grief and my calamity is very heavy. So he says, Job says, this is what I actually feel like. He says, I feel like I'm target practice for God. Look what it says in verse 4 of chapter 6. He says, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me. He's like, I have been struck down by the arrows of the Almighty. The second part of that says, the terrors of God do set themselves in array against me. To set in array is a military term where the armies would line up and on one side, just like the Philistines would set the army in array, and then the Israelites would set the army in array. They face each other. So this is a military tactic. He says, I feel like God has set himself in array against me, and he is just shooting his arrows at me. I feel like target practice for the Almighty. Chapter 7 and verse 20, the very end of Job's speech, he comes back to this when he says, the last part of that, why hast thou set me as a mark against thee? He's like, I feel like target practice. I feel like you are the marksman and I am the mark. It's like he says, I feel like I've just got this massive big target on me, and God is just he's just shooting his arrows at me. That's how Job felt. He says, why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? And so that's how he feels in this whole situation. And he takes umbrage with what Eliphaz says. He says in chapter 6 and verse 14, he says, to him that is afflicted, pity should be showed from his friend. which is not what he received from Eliphaz. He didn't receive pity. He received the wagging finger. Job, you've just done wrong, and you need to humble yourself. And Job says, man, I actually want pity is what I want from my friend, not a wagging finger. And all he got was a wagging finger. He says, him that is afflicted, pity should be shown from his friend, but he forsaketh the fear of the Almighty. He takes it as well in chapter 6 and verse 24. It says, teach me. He's saying to Eliphaz. It's like his arms are open here. Teach me, Eliphaz. Teach me. And I will hold my tongue. I will be quiet. You teach me and cause me to understand wherein I have erred. You told me, you just laid it out to me that I am under the judging hand of God and I should submit to the correcting hand of God. He says, that's fine. Okay, that's good advice. But tell me why he is chastising me and why he has set his mark against me if I am guilty. Show this to me. And it's like he is saying, teach me. I'm going to listen. Where have I erred? What have I done wrong? Show me the person that I have stolen from. Show me the person to whom I have lied. Show me the person to whom I have cheated on my wife with. Show me these people. Where is it? He's saying, is what he's saying. Teach me. And he says in verse 25, how forcible are right words? He says, I'm okay with you debating me and I'm okay with you giving me hard words because right words are forcible. There's a power in the use of words when used correctly. He says, how forcible are right words. But he goes on to say, but what doth your arguing reprove? Sometimes people just argue without ever really having a purpose behind what they're saying. And they think they are being forceful with right words, but all they are doing is arguing. And arguing actually doesn't achieve anything. Rhiannon likes to use this verse a lot with the kids, particularly with big kids. And says, what doth your arguing reprove? Like what? All of this arguing back and forth, what's it actually going to achieve? It's not going to achieve anything. What you think it's going to achieve, because arguing, you don't win people by arguing. You win people by, you can win by, there is a force in using words correctly, but just arguing for the sake of arguing, he says, you're actually going to turn people off. And so he is saying to Eliphaz, right, don't argue with me about these. Show me these things. If you're going to use right words, well, use them right. But don't just argue with me for the sake of arguing with me. And so he pleads his innocence, is basically what he says back. And in it all, you start seeing Job's heart towards God here, the frustration where he just wants to, his sorrow clouds his view of God. And you see in that last part of chapter 7, where he says, what is man, verse 17, what is man that thou shouldest magnify him and that thou shouldest set thine heart upon him? He's saying this, what is man that God would even care about him? The psalmist asked the same question. What is man that thou art mindful of him, in the sense of, God, why do you care for us? But Job is asking it is, why do you even care what I do or don't do? Why does God care about man? If he has set his mark upon me, why does he even care to set his mark upon me? That's what Job is saying there, and he's saying. He says, what is man that thou shouldest magnify him, that thou shouldest set thine heart upon him, and that thou shouldest visit him every morning and try him every moment? And in all of this argument, Job still pleads to what his original case was. He says, I just want to die. I just want God to end my life and cut it off. He said, I just want to be done with this. I don't want to wake up tomorrow. In fact, I thought there was comfort going to my bed and my couch, but then I was troubled and got visions and nightmares upon my bed. And he says, no comfort even upon there. And so he just says, God, could you just cut me off? Just cut me off from the land of the living and let me go to the grave. At least that way I'm not coming back to this sorrow and misery, is his perspective of what he's saying it. And there's a deep sorrow there again. Eliphaz is probably sitting there going, actually what I thought was a really strong argument probably doesn't hold much weight to this man who's in sorrow and grief. And so the next friend says, right, I'll have a go, which is what we'll have a look at next week. And you can read that when Bildad picks up the conversation in chapter number 8. So read chapter number 8 before you come next week. And we'll leave off there at this particular juncture in the conversation between these friends. Sometimes it's good to be reminded that these are friends.